board. I have got another project for you today. This project is, again, they're not new. It's simply another version of a great bag. And this is how I've been putting them together. So I want to show you some of our things that we've got. I've got 3 sizes. So here's a medium. The bags have got the zippers and they're completely lined, which is great. I made some little crocheted flowers to go on mine with some covered buttons just to decorate them. You can decorate them however you like. The backing is a solid. This one is some beautiful Lori Holt fabrics that I had. Again, another little flower. This is one of our, I think that's Lori Holt's new lined stitch, and her little zipper pull, which is just adorable. Zip again, and all lined on the inside. And the backing, I was really in love with this floral and wanted to find a way to incorporate it into something, so this is where it got put. I've also got a different style, and these project bags are quilted on the backs and with a patchwork showing through, but using vinyl. They're a little different, not hard, and I'm going to show you today how to make one, put your zipper in, use the vinyl, and get it bound. So again, there's a couple of different sizes. This is the large with the vinyl. We're going to do medium, and I also did a mini. And this one, I kind of like to use these ones for things like my small scissors, my needle minder. I think I've got one over here to show you. I do a lot of cross stitch and a lot of handwork, and I just find it really helpful to make sure I've always got my little supplies tucked inside of a bag, which then fits nicely in here and I don't lose track of it. Just one of those things. However, I did something a bit different with this one. I was going through some of my fabrics, and I found some orphan blocks. Orphan blocks, I don't like to waste them. Didn't know really what I was going to do with them, but of course I was hoarding them. I didn't let go of them. But then I realized, well, wouldn't these make super cute little bags? And you're not even going near the work of putting together a patchwork because you've already got it done. And the beauty is you can build whatever size you want using your orphan block. This one just happened to be a 4.5-inch block, so I just built it out a little bit to make it a size that worked for me, and it's perfect. So you don't just have to have, you know, a certain line of fabrics. Obviously I've got, this was a new fall line that we had. This is some Lori Holt. And for those of you that know Kim Deal, this was some actually Kim Deal cutoffs that we had here in the store that I just took a bunch of them and made them into 2.5-inch squares and used them up. So it's a great way to use up some stuff that you have. So that's the mini, and you could make, if you've got an 8-inch block, you could definitely use that and build it out. Just build it out to whatever size you want, and as you watch the tutorial on how I make it, you'll see how you can sort of customize them any way that you want. Okay, so again, this is the size that we're going to make today. Some of these, I like this size for paper piecing. It keeps everything nice and neat inside, and it's not huge. The larger size I do like for my cross stitch because it holds the hoops. So my hoop goes in there, my Q-snap, or the round hoops, oval hoops, on my thread, on my thread keepers. So it's a good size, and it's great to just take with us wherever we're going, or if I'm not driving, then I get to sit and stitch. Okay, so I'm going to put these aside for you for now, and we're going to look at the supplies. The supplies that I like to use for making these, there's a couple of things that you might not normally have. Of course, your ruler, you get your ruler, your iron, your pressing mat. I use Wonder Clips. Wonder Clips are really, really important when you're doing this, because you're working with vinyl. You cannot pin your vinyl. You have to be very, very aware of that. So Wonder Clips are your best friend. The other thing that I use is, well, I call it a rolly presser. It presses out a seam for you without using any heat. When you're working with vinyl, obviously you can't iron, but this helps to really press out that seam so you get it nice and crisp for when you want to top stitch. Really important piece. The other thing that I use is my design boards. I've already sewn this one patchwork piece together for you to get this started. But when I'm getting this going, I like to lay out all of my squares first and have a look to make sure that I haven't butted something up against each other that is too similar, just so that it has a nice, nice cohesive patchwork look to it. And I think for tools, that's about it for what you're going to need. Now, this particular medium size, this one came to, and I'm just going to double check here, yeah, the 12.5 by 12.5 square, once it's been all pressed out, okay, and sewn, just using the 1/4 inch seam and making sure that I was pressing in opposite directions to keep everything nice and flat and neat. Again, I'm going to use fusible fleece. I like it. It really makes a difference. I don't generally use anything other than the fusible fleece when I'm working with this stuff, only because I want it to stay in place while I'm quilting it. Because we're going to quilt this piece, just like we did on these, so that it looks, it has that nice patchwork look. And it's not anything fancy quilting. It's strictly a 1/4 inch quilting. So I've got this piece ready. I'm just going to make sure that iron's on. Looks like it needs to warm up a smidge. Okay. And we're going to layer your 3 pieces. So my backing is the same size, and you're going to layer that, and the other thing, again, I use sometimes is my 505. Because this is a small piece, normally when you're quilting, machine quilting, you're going to have pins and your anchor stitches to keep it from moving around. This is a really small piece to have a lot of pins in, because you'll be stopping and starting constantly. So I like to have it well fused. So I'm going to flip this over, and I'm just going to roll this back a bit. And better just move these out of the way so they don't get 505 on them. And I'm just going to give it a little squirt. Bring that down. Like so. here. Again, all I'm doing right now is just making sure this is super secure so that it makes my quilting go much faster and easier. And I'm going to move my vinyl so I don't touch that with the iron. Like this. Now I'm going to come over to the pressing mat, and I'm going to give this a really good press. Again, you're using the fusible fleece, so you're not ironing, you're pressing, which is really important. You don't want this to move around and get all skewed on you, because then it just won't look nice. So we're just going to press that. And these bags are completely customizable to whatever you're doing. I do like to customize them and make them for certain projects, but there's lots of things that you can do, and I really had fun playing with my orphan blocks and putting those together and seeing what I could come up with. So here you go. Let's make sure this is nice and flat. Good. Now, let's see, we've got all of this put together. I am going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch up and down each of my seams and then back and forth so that I get that nice patchwork look, and it'll be completely secured. This will not move once it's done. So here we go. Okay, now I'm going to move my needle back as I had moved it before. Okay, so I've got that section done, and I'm just going to do a quick flip over here, make sure everything is looking good, and it does. So you can see how valuable it is taking that extra time using the 505 and the adhesive fusible fleece, because it makes a big difference. Everything just seems to just stay together beautifully. And now I'm just going to go across the other way and not worry about all these extra bits here, because those are going to be trimmed off as soon as I get to squaring up. So we have now quilted our little piece. Before we go any further, I do want to mention I like to do a little 1/8 all the way around. When you're working with the vinyl, when we get to the other portions where we're layering, it's just nice to know that this is not going to fly up and fray on you. So it doesn't matter where you start. Okay, I'm going to go take this to the cutting mat and I'm going to trim up all these bits, and then we're going to set this aside for the next step. Here we are, we're all quilted, and I've done little tiny 1/8 of an inch stitch all the way around, just so that I can make sure nothing comes apart while I'm working on it. And I'm just going to use this little ruler just to get rid of all my fuzz and such that are on the sides. Just to keep it all nice and neat. There we go. It's not much you're cutting off, it's just slivers really, but it does help to keep the threads all neat and tidy. There we go, put more. So that's nothing. And there we are. We are now ready to just set this aside while we work on our zipper unit of the bag. Okay, so I'm going to put this out over here. And I'm now going to bring in our zipper. And this is the top portion of the bag. So our zipper will work in here like so. Now you're probably looking at that saying, well, now why is that so much longer? I like to, I'll probably cut this down to about a 14-inch. But I do like to have a little bit extra on the ends, just so that I can make sure I get it centered evenly and I've got a bit of wiggle room. We can always trim it up afterwards. So, I'll just take this out of the way a bit. And we'll trim this down. And trim this end down. Okay. Now you're going to notice I have put some SF101. Any fusible, lightweight, woven interfacing will work. I like this one. I just feel like it gives me enough stability in this top portion. I'm going to bring this one back in here. In here, it does give it a nice, just a little stiffness, a little bit of body so it doesn't flop around, and it holds your zipper in really sharp. Just keeps it nice. Okay? So, putting in a zipper is not scary, so don't worry, I promise you. Biggest thing that you're going to want to remember is you do not want to have your zipper pull on the wrong side. So when you are working with the zipper and you're going to be attaching it, I'm going to put it together like this. That's how it's going to look, okay, when you're all done. So we're going to take this portion of the zipper and put right sides together here. And this is where you use your wonder clips again. I just find it much easier than working with pins with a zipper. I just feel that the pins can sometimes distort that zipper, and you want to make sure that you have a nice even line. So I'm going to put these in. Okay. And let's see where we're. Okay. That looks good. I'm going to bring this portion back in. I ended up choosing the red. I really liked I like the red with this one. And that's looking pretty good. It's pretty centered. I'm going to put another clip here so I can get started. I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch, I'm going to say to you a scant quarter all the way down, okay, and then we're going to press that up. So let's get that sewn. And here we go. Move that over a bit. Okay. Again, this is a good time if you feel more comfortable to slow your machine down a little bit. You can. I'm going to bring this zipper pull down. Just a bit while I'm sewing this one in place. Okay. I'm just going to lift my presser foot and bring that zipper up along here. Sorry, that part's a little bit finicky. There we go. And that is up and out of the way. Make sure we're still lined up nicely. I feel like I might be off a bit. Okay. We're going to go all the way to the end. Collect these guys up. And there we go. You can see that the zipper is all nice and neatly in there. And we're going to press this open. Sorry, press this down. So basically you're going to take the zipper and press it down towards the seam. And we're going to top stitch right along here so that it looks nice and neat. This is where my roller comes in handy. Don't like applying a lot of heat to the nylon zippers. So I just give this a little roll. And it just encourages that fabric to stay down and make it easier for when you're wanting to top stitch. Okay. You're gonna bring this down, and again, it's about 1/8. You just want to have that come down nicely and hold this in place so that it doesn't flip up on you. Get started. just taking my time. I'm not rushing it because I want it to, you're going to see that top stitching. You want that to look really nice. So I'm going to stop here, lift my presser foot, and just bring my zipper back. Like so. Readjust myself so that I can stitch this down. And there you go. That's all nice and neat. So, next, we are going to attach the other side. Before we do that, I'm going to close up my zipper here. I'm going to take a couple of stitches and stay stitch this together, just so that I don't have it flopping around. And it keeps it all nice and even. Again, these stitches are not going to be seen at all. They're just for security right now. And let's back that up. I just come on the other side of that little metal piece. So, okay, now we're going to attach the other portion. Okay, so here we go. We've got one side done. We're going to again do the same thing. And I'll move this out of the way so you can see it better. Make sure that's all nicely lined up. And use the Wonder Clips again. These little guys are brilliant. I never knew how much I missed them until I actually started using them. Okay. So we're just going to again stitch all the way down. Okay, so here you have it. This is your zipper portion. Flip it over for you. It's nice and neat. Okay, no raw edges. And there you go. I like to take my backing, the quilted portion, and I like to center it on my bag, like so. And from there, I'm just going to flip it over and make sure that everything is all nicely lined up, and it is. The next absolute most important part of this, because this it'll be terrible to try and get the zipper pulled back on. Before you go to cut your piece, and because you're making sure that it's all nicely centered in here. So you're going to want to make sure that that pull is completely in here and is not on the other side of where you're going to cut and stitch. So again, this is another part where I will take my friction pen. I might just bring this down a smidge so I can be certain of my spot. I'm going to take my ruler right along this edge and I'm going to mark it on either side of the zipper. I'll do the same on this side here. So essentially what I'm doing is creating new ends, just so that this doesn't go flying off on us before we get it all sewn into place. So I'll go to the machine and do that now. Again, this is not going to be seen. It's just one of those little helpful. Take your time going over the zipper. Your needle will go just fine. It is nylon. One side. And now I'm going to come to this one. As I'm coming up to this one, you can see that the zipper's open a little bit, which is fine. You're just going to want to use your fingers and hold those teeth nicely together. Okay. So, that one is done. Now we can take this again over here and make sure we're all lined up nice and neat. Okay. I'm going to flip this over. Trim it off. Again, I'm going to triple check, and it is. My zipper pull is in the center. It's nowhere near the edge where it could come flying off on me, and that would be terrible. Oh, here we go. I'm going to keep that up there. This is now our piece. Now comes for the vinyl. And there's a couple things I want to talk about with vinyl before we get going. Vinyl comes with this tissue portion that rolls it up. I've kind of pre-cut my piece to size, but the tissue paper, I'm going to fold it in half. You don't want to get rid of this. Now, this is not any accurate size. There's nothing fancy about this. You are just going to cut it into some strips. Just like this. Collect them up. I'm going to keep one out for now. So there's no specific measurement, or it's just random. We use these when we're sewing with the vinyl onto material. Vinyl will stick to your presser foot, and you'll just have the devil of a time if you don't have this piece of tissue down to help it smoothly go on. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is cut this to size. I'm going to move this piece of tissue first. So we've got our bag, and we have our zipper portion. And this section should still measure 12.5, which it does. Okay, and this section from here to here is the next part that you want to measure. And you're going to want to take up 1/4 inch, because of course that's going to go into your seam allowance. And it is a 7 3/4 right there. That's what I'm seeing. So I know that this is 12.5 wide, and I'm going to cut it down at 7 3/4. So now, although I don't generally use lines on my cutting mat, in this case I do, because I want to make sure that it just stays really nice and lined up and square. So this, and there we go. And I am going to just use my rotary and slice that, and it comes off no problem. Okay. And this can be saved for another project. Okay, vinyl and this section. You are going to attach your zipper unit to the vinyl piece. And I'm going to suggest when you do that, you're going to go like so. So you've got your face up, right side's facing up is your zipper portion, your vinyl, and now for the tissue. And you're going to line that tissue up just as if it was a regular seam or a piece of fabric, and you're going to put your wonder clips in to hold it in place. Like I say, without it, your machine will, the presser foot will stick on the vinyl, and you'll get tugging and pulling. Other little tip that I'm going to tell you, you're going to want to lengthen your stitch when using the vinyl. If you have a stitch length at like 2.0, you're almost going to be getting to the point of perforation, and you don't want to perforate your vinyl. So I think mine I put at a 3, just so that I did not have it to the point of perforating the vinyl, but actually stitching it. And I'm going to do one more here. Okay, so once that's on, you see that we're going to have that portion. Let's go to the sewing machine and stitch this down. All right, now I feel like I'm pretty much lined up here, nice and even with everything. So this is a really good point here. I don't know if you can see it, but this can stick over here as well. So if you're finding that to be an issue, I just took a piece of paper and slid it under so that everything was moving nice and cohesively together. I want to make sure that's nice and lined up. Okay. I'm going to anchor a couple stitches. Now here you'll see I'm going to increase my stitch length to a 3. All right, take that paper. Now you can see here, you've got a nice top stitch, and that finishes off that edge completely. So it's nice and neat. So we're going to go over and do the final step of attaching the bag together. Okay, so here we are. Here's your zipper. The zipper unit and vinyl now is all attached, and I'm going to place this on here. I cut my vinyl a little bit longer than what is necessary. I just do it so that I have got some wiggle room, because I would rather square it up than not have enough if I've made a mistake somewhere along the way. So I'm going to use the clips again. I'm sure you can see how handy these guys have come in during this process. And that's good. We're all square. Here, square that, attach this one to this end, just so we don't have anybody sliding off. It shouldn't, but just to be on the safe side. Now, wonder clips will, because they do have a little bit of a, kind of a bumpy part here. They're not exactly teeth, but there is a bit of a bumpy part. Don't put it too far in. Without something on top, or as it will leave an indent, a little bit of a mark on your vinyl. So try not to do that. Before I go ahead and do any more, I'm just going to trim this piece down. Here we go. So again, we're going to be sewing on vinyl. So what do we need? More tissue paper. Probably going to need a couple pieces here. We don't need any for the top because there's no vinyl and there's nothing that will catch up there. But it's certainly in here. And also, by using the tissue, we're not going to damage the vinyl at all and make any marks in it, because you don't want to have marks in that. So I'm going to sew here, then I'm going to remove my vinyl. I'm going to place another piece of tissue, sew along this side, And then again, another piece of tissue on this side as I sew it down, and that will have all of our seams enclosed. So, go ahead and start that. Okay, here we go. Let's check our seam because I moved some stuff around here. Okay. And we're back at 2.5, so that's what we want. Oh, guess that helps. Now, this isn't being sewn at a full quarter. It's definitely a scant quarter, because I'm just holding together. Okay. And there's that tissue gone. And the clips. And let's go back over here. Okay. Well, there you have most of your bag completed. The last step that you can do, and we will put this on, is your binding. Now, you're going to do this binding just as you would any other binding of a quilt. The only difference is I like to go to a 2 1/4 width, fold it in half. We don't need a giant bulky binding on this. Something nice and thin, I think looks really nice. That's just my preference. You can certainly, by all means, do a 2.5 inch if that's what you prefer. There's no problem with that. But I think we will get started, and I will put the binding on this for you, and we can go from there. So let's go. I pre-rolled my binding and did it just because I knew for time you didn't want to have to sit and watch me make a binding. So here we go. As usual, we're just going to leave a tail up here, and this is a fairly small piece, so I'm gonna start down here. It'll just make it easier to make my connection at the top. Okay. I say we're attaching binding just like we normally do. You're going to bring that up, miter that corner nicely, bring it down, and line it up. Now you're going to notice here I'm not using any more tissue because we have no more parts of the machine are actually touching the vinyl. It's just fabric. So let's pull this one in. Okay, we're going to come up to our last corner to miter and Then I'm going to attach my ends so that they are all nice and neat and you won't see the join. Okay. Sorry, I got my corner thread stuck again. And I think that's actually as far as I'm going to go with that anyway. I'm going to stop. Now, when you are doing your binding, there's a ton of different ways to do it. Everybody has their own little way. I'm going to show you with what works with my brain. I don't know if that's good or bad, but here's what I do. I'm going to take this portion, I fold it up, and I just make a finger crease. I bring this one, this bottom tail, I bring it and fold it and meet the two, like so. I'm going to take this piece and I am going to cut it on that fold. Again, there are a ton of different ways of doing this. This is simply what works in my head. And you have to do what works for you and what makes it easy for you. Now we're going to be able to squish this up and fold it up a little bit because it's such a small piece. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to grab a pin because I misplaced one. So I'm going to sew a diagonal line right across here. Basically, it's right sides together, and I know this looks terribly awkward, but it does make it quite nice. And you just want to make sure everything is nice and square. I cut mine a little bit short. Okay, I'm going to make that work because I still pulled right into that center. Flatten out your piece a little bit. Make sure that it's nice and tight before you go cutting all your ends. Because that would be sad if you cut it and it wasn't correct and you cut your binding off. Put that there. Now I'm going to finger press this down. Again. Now see how that lays completely flat and it does not show anywhere that you attached your ends together. It just looks all the same. And there we have it. Okay, I'm going to take it over here. So here we have our binding all sewn down. Now I will not hand sew the binding down and bore you to tears while I do that, I do want to show you another little thing that I like to do with this, with my roller, especially with the vinyl, with regards to binding. Give it another press. Just give it just a little go. It will help keep that nice and flat. All the way around, so. Of course, you can use your iron on this part if you so choose. I just don't even like to use my iron at this point when I have any vinyl on here, just for the sake of not having an accident with it. Okay, you can use your wonder clips at this point. You're going to pull this around, and these are basically self-mitered, these corners, because of the way we did them. You just want to poke those out, and you see that? Perfectly mitered. And you're going to just attach your clips. Just be careful that you're not clipping onto the vinyl. Okay, you keep it right on that binding. I went a little close there on that one. Hand sew that in place and embellish. Do whatever you like to do. Add on some fun tassels. You can add needle minders, little crocheted flowers if you choose. There's so many things that you can do, and these bags are great. You will always be able to find all of your things that you're stitching, especially all your handwork. And that is my tutorial on my take on the project bag. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.